Shri Ajit Doval, are very senior veterans and distinguished members of the society, ladies, gentlemen, members of the media. It's a pleasure to be amongst you and undertaking what I would call a daunting task, to be speaking to some people who have been and who are still keeping in touch with matters of national security. When I chose the topic, the aim behind was that national security has shifted in paradigm from what it used to be thought. There was a time when national security was defined more in terms of how a nation saw the external threats. But today, national security looks at economic, diplomatic, it looks at political power, it looks at what power projection a nation can do, and it looks at myriad other things that go into making the spirit of the nation. And that is the important part. It is that will, the spirit, and how a nation evolves itself into a wholesome state which is able to stand all kinds of pressures to preserve its meaning. And that is a very large segment that I would say is what national security is today. Actually, there is no single acceptable definition for national security. You go around, you'll find all kinds of definitions that are floated around. Some talk of how a nation can coerce others, some talk of how a nation can ward off coercion, some talk of how a nation can make itself strong enough to be able to carry on with what it wants to do the best. One of the things which I picked up, which I thought was very interesting, is what Barack Obama said in 2010 when he talked of national security, and it was an all-encompassing world. And I would like to convey it to you so that then we understand how the concept of national security has transcended various fields and what a broad view it has and what all it amalgamates, before I go on to talk about some specifics and touch upon a few issues which will be of interest. Barack Obama said that the national security of the United States concerns the security of the state, its citizens, US allies and partners. It is a worldview. He also said that it caters for a strong, innovative and growing US economy. He wanted the US to be an economic power which is able to do a lot of things. He talked of respect for universal values at home and around the world. He talked of an international order advanced by US leadership that promotes peace, security and opportunity through stronger cooperation. Now, it's a real wide field which he has covered where national security of his own country is concerned. And I think when we look at national security, we need to also look in our terms as something which is wide, which is broad, which is all-encompassing, and which gives us the ability to cater for our distinctive place that we want. Our national security thinking is predicated on two factors. And it has been so for a very long time. And those two factors are that as a nation state, India does not covet anybody else's territory. And the second is that it does not want to impose its ideology on anybody else. Now these two factors have affected the way our thinking has been, the way we have, rather I'll say that this has been the prism through which we have looked at various aspects of national security. But when you enlarge the scope of national security, because these two aspects only talk of a part of national security, which is what was prevalent during those days when we became independent. But today, there is a need to go beyond this and look at how we will see national security in a wider view, which helps us in standing strong, in making our nation capable, and in looking at those things which will make us a much more better nation. Security challenges can be divided in two. You have external challenges and you have internal challenges. Now when we look at external challenges, some of the issues that in national security which concern us are: one, as part of our external relationships, how do we cope up with China? Our large neighbor in the north, a neighbor which has done tremendous amount of progress in all fields. Its economy is booming, despite a lot of speculation that there might be an implosion. No implosion has been seen. In fact, it seems to be galloping. Militarily, it has been able to channelize enough funds which the economy has given it to make its military worthwhile. It has embarked on transforming its military to cater for a modern war, and it looks at US as a peer competitor. It has done great amount of infrastructural development, and if we were to compare what it was in 1949 as India was, it has gone way beyond. The problem in coping up with China is that we are the only nation with which the borders have not been set. And therefore, there is a leeway available whenever it wants, that it can create an issue on the border with us till the time the borders are set. There is no denying the fact that it is in our interest to cooperate economically and to cooperate with in all other fields with China, for the simple reason that it gives us greater dividends with the type of economy that is prevailing in our market. In any case, I feel that if the Walmarts come in, we will see a large amount of Chinese goods flooding our market. Therefore, when we look at national security, coping with China is an issue which needs to be underlined and which needs to be taken note of in what our responses should be, in what we want to craft as our policy, in what we want to do where the settlement of borders are concerned, and lastly, what we want to do to be prepared for that eventuality if things go wrong. If we don't cater for these issues, we have a problem. The second thing that we need to look at is the shaping of our immediate neighborhood. And in this I include all the countries which are our neighbors. One of the regions which affects us because of the various non-state actors that are propagated is the Afghanistan-Pakistan region. It is called the epicenter of global terrorism. Various things come from there. And we need to look at this area more pragmatically, more in terms of how the various issues can be resolved out there which result in disturbances inside India. We are aware of the type of proxy war that rages in a part of our country. We are aware of the type of support structures that exist, and we are aware of the instability that prevails in our neighborhood because of global terrorism. And if we want peaceful growth, if we want our country to carry on the path of progress, we need to look at this immediate neighborhood on our west in terms of what can be done to ensure that this area does not remain as volatile as it is today. We also have a neighbor with which we have excellent relations in Nepal. Politically, things have not gone well. We know the type of instability that exists, and somehow we have managed from very good relations to land up at a place where we are struggling to ensure that our relationships remain on an even keel. This is a country we need to watch for the simple reason that we have historical, we have people to people, and we have religious ties built into our relationship with them. It's a country where free movement is permitted. It's a country which also comes in the news for various types of infiltrations that take place through Nepal into mainland. And there is a need in our security paradigm to look at various measures which will be able to ensure that our relationship improves and comes on such strong footing that we are able to ward off any threat that may take place. Further east, we have Myanmar. We have made good progress recently in trying to improve our relationship. Our problem has been that a lot of our relationships have not been predicated on realism. They have been predicated on idealism. And that is why a lot of times we do not look at realistic national interests with our neighbors. And we land up in a situation where we create an aspect of confusion and a mistrust in our neighbor where they do not understand what our actual policy is. Myanmar is an important country. Myanmar is a country which is our gateway to the southeast. Myanmar is a country where the common population and a large number of leaders look towards India for various reasons. It is a country which is seeing growing influence from China. It's a country which is on path of transforming itself from what it was considered as a junta-ruled entity to something which is different. And therefore, it will be in our national security interest to ensure that we have good working relationship which instills confidence in the diplomatic and other relations that we forge with Myanmar. We have Bangladesh, and we have the hero who was architect in many ways for the liberation of Bangladesh sitting amongst us. Our relationship has seen lots of ups and downs. And again, I think it is because we have not followed a constant, a pragmatic, a policy that should have ensured that a country which was liberated by the common blood of Indian and Bangladeshi soldiers should have been very, very friendly. We are all aware that there was a time when there was a great amount of distrust. With the present polity, we have good relations. What happens in the future remains a question mark. And therefore, again, as part of our national security initiatives, Bangladesh is a very important segment which needs to be looked at, which needs to be moved, which needs to be given the type of confidence that it trusts us in various things that can happen. We go down further south to Sri Lanka. From relations which bordered on a lot of suspicion, we came to relations where there was a great amount of trust that seemed to be there, till we decided to vote on a motion on which we have never voted ever in UN on human rights. And again, with Sri Lanka, we have reached a state where there is a great amount of suspicion on how our internal politics can derail a perfectly good relationship with a country. It will take us some time to ensure that this distrust goes away. Because once a distrust sets in, it becomes very difficult to take it out, because there are always many interested quarters in a country which thrive on ensuring that such distrusts are fanned for their own internal political use. I think with Sri Lanka, a great amount of effort will have to be made. This was so far as shaping of our immediate neighborhood is concerned. Let's now look internally. The first thing that I would like to talk of, which will befit more somebody from the Navy talking about, is it is securing of our maritime boundaries. Historically, whenever we have had people who have succeeded in making lodgements on our soil, it has always been from the sea. And there is a great amount of effort required to look after this more than 7,500 kilometers of our maritime boundary, to ensure that we are not only able to safeguard it, but we are also able to look after our economic zone, which houses so much of wealth where India is concerned. We are aware of the type of disputes we already have with few countries. We are also aware of how 26/11 took place. My understanding is that a lot of efforts have been made for ensuring that there is better coherence in various agencies that operate to safeguard our maritime interests and the boundary. But there is a great amount of effort required if we do not want anything untowards happening in the future from our maritime boundary. Internally, there are some issues which are averred, which are talked of in military terms, and there are some issues which make for how a nation will go where it will. And firstly, let me just touch upon two of the areas which always come up militarily or in all military talks. One is J&K. Yes, situation is improving. Yes, the number of terrorists have gone down. But the support structure that sustains these terrorists is still intact. The support structure that exists across our borders for training them is still intact. And therefore, when we talk of peace, it should never be measured in how many tourists were born, but it should be measured in terms of how the support structure has been brought down, so that in future the tap is not turned full time for a different purpose. J&K, I'll say, remains a question mark in terms of sensitivity that it has. The separatists are still intact. They still profusely give out their cause, and no effort seems to have been made to fight this ideology that is being preached. Until the time we do not take measures against this type of ideology, we will always have problems in the future. The other area is our northeast. We have had great success in some of the states, but some of the states are still in a state which can be called that they can go anywhere. There is rampant extortion in Nagaland. In fact, somebody was jokingly telling me that a lot of that money finds place in the NCR in the property. Besides that, in Nagaland, if you were to take the strength of both the NSCM main groups, it's huge with arms. And despite the so-called ceasefire that exists, at times you get an impression that there is some sort of a parallel government that seems to be functioning in that state. There is a need for us as a country to ensure that this problem is settled at the earliest. Otherwise, it can become a huge security issue because of interest of some of our inimical powers, which are ensuring that these things are fanned at the right time so that they become a headache. The other state which sees violence is Manipur. And I always tell my friends that the Maiti community in Manipur is in a constant state of depression. And the reason is that that's a state which raised the tricolor when the country became independent, but never got the statehood till it decided to fight for it. Somewhere, as policy we have gone. Today, there are two major groups which are still fighting. It is still a state which sees a lot of violence. And more innovative methodologies are required to ensure that whatever success the military gains out there is taken forward in bringing the two groups of Maitis to the talking table so that peace can be brought to this particular state. All other states we really don't have much of a problem, except what we saw in Assam, where we saw a thing being ignited because the areas are very sensitive. And the answer to various issues in Assam lie in ensuring that the various groups which are armed and the various groups which are vying for influence for various purposes, basically for gaining power in a particular area, are monitored and kept in check. If monitoring is not done well in time, if people do not react in timely manner, then we will keep having the type of problems that we have had in Assam. I firmly believe that the recent state of incidents in Assam could have been checked well in advance or just before this birth. It was possible. But if you look at the type of events that took place, you will find paramilitary forces' strength was brought down during those days. There was a late reaction from even the troops on ground, despite Armed Forces Special Power Act being in force. And somewhere our handling has gone wrong. I think there is a need for us to handle state Assam in a better manner because of the type of various demographic compositions that it has. And if it is not tackled properly, then we will land up in problem. One thing which concerns us most and which is a problem that will confront us in coming years is what is termed in politically correct terms as left-wing extremism or Naxalism, and a large part of our country is affected. It's very interesting that in 1990, less than 50 districts were affected by Naxalism. And as our new economic policies came in, today more than 272 districts are affected. And there would be more because no violence has been seen in these areas, and therefore they are not counted as districts affected by Naxalism or left-wing extremism. The problem is growing. As the differences between poor and the rich grow, as the governance falters, as exploitation of various segments of society take place, Naxalism will find easy recruits and easy areas to spread. And therefore, it is a huge problem where national security is concerned. And a range of measures are required which should be able to address the socio-economic concerns and the developmental concerns of the people if we want reduction of Naxalism in India. There are issues which affect the fiber of a nation. And these issues subsequently transform on how the population behaves or how the population takes up various things in a different way. And one of the things that is affecting us, and it has a great effect on the population, is corruption prevailing in the country. Now, it's a field which will create its own ripple effect in the population, because this leads to various other things. It leads to distortions within the society, and it leads to a great amount of fall in various standards which are acceptable to the society. It leads to what is happening today, which we are seeing, to inflation. It has led to all kinds of agitations that are taking place, and as these agitations intensify, as people get more demoralized and disoriented, as people lose confidence on the entities which govern, it becomes a ripe ground for left-wing extremism or any other such ideology to creep. And therefore, as a nation, national security paradigm encompasses the various issues that afflict a nation like corruption, inflation, and social disharmony that is promoted because of narrow vote bank concerns. All these add to disharmony in the nation, and therefore form part of the national security paradigm which make the nation weak or strong. And the more fractured a nation is, more unstable a nation is, it becomes a good hunting ground from people from across the borders, across the seas, for exploitation. We have to be careful in what policies are promulgated for governance and other things in the country, so that the country becomes strong and not weak. Two more issues which need to be looked at from national security prism. One is intelligence. Why I talk of intelligence is not because Duval is sitting here. When I talk of it, because any country which is caught unprepared for any event will suffer. And intelligence needs synergy amongst all the agencies that operate and not competition amongst all the agencies that operate. Unfortunately, we see competition rather than synergy. Until the time we do not make our intelligence apparatus strong enough, till the time we do not ensure that there is a great amount of synergy in the agencies that look externally and internally, we are likely to have problems in the future. This is a field which needs great amount of strengthening. It is a field which needs people who are full-time intelligence operatives and do not shift from one job into another and then come back just because they want to find a slot for something. It's a full-time job. It's an expertise. It's a specialization which needs to be looked at. The other area that concerns national security is cyber field. Cyber warfare, usage of cyberspace, usage of everything that is concerned with the World Wide Web. We have seen the type of problems in the recent incidents that were triggered off, which resulted in migration of a segment of our population from various towns. It was just, I think, a trailer, and we were caught unawares because we never thought of it. I think any right-thinking Indian should have thought of this right in the beginning, because such incidents have happened even earlier. There is a need for a very, very robust mechanism which should be able to not only defend you from the type of cyber attacks, but also give you the capability to retaliate when the time comes. It needs to be built. It needs to be strengthened. And again, there is a great amount of synergy required in various people who deal in this field, rather than keeping it in a competitive mode with various institutions that are working on it. One field that I think is important and which I thought forms a very important part of national security is reducing defense preparedness dependence on foreign countries. Till the time, as a country, we are not capable of making our own systems, till the time we are not capable of ensuring that what we want is mostly indigenous, we will always be dependent on people who will be able to exploit us. Whether it is in terms of quality, whether it is in terms of generating corruption by bribing some of our people, because ultimately a lot of people say that every human being has a price. People exploit that. And till the time we do not ensure that all those who are entrusted with ensuring this indigenous capability are held accountable so that they can show the type of results that are required from them, we will have a problem. If after such a long time, China, which had no industrial base, can become a big exporter of arms and ammunition, there is no reason why India should not have. I'll just narrate an incident. I visited Oman in 2005. They still swore by the type of ammunition we had supplied to them in 50s. They said, we have tried to get ammunition from other countries, but your ammunition which came to us in 50s is still the best. No, that is the kind of quality we need to create even for ourselves. Today, it is the opposite. Some of our own ammunition which our troops use, they don't trust it. They say there's got a problem. There's a type of ammunition that people use where they're scared of using it because it goes off in the tank itself. You can't have things like this. We need to create a great capability which should be able to ensure that no power in the world is able to twist our arms when the time comes. And that can only come if we have an indigenous base, indigenous capability, and a wherewithal which should be able to provide us with quality weapon and ammunition. A lot of it can be done. There is nothing which cannot be done. And therefore, when we look at national security, we look at not just the external challenges, but we look at the type of internal challenges and strife that takes place in the country. And you are aware, historically, India was never conquered till the time internally it became weak. Till the time internally people sided with the enemy. Till the time internally we were not fractured. Till the time we were one, we were able to have India which was far stronger and unconquerable. And we only became slaves because of our own internal weakness. And this internal weakness is the most important ingredient of national security. Because till the time, like a human body, if you are not internally healthy, you will have a problem. So we cannot remain sick. We need to do a lot of work to ensure that there is a internal strife is brought under control. And internal strife is a very wide field. It is not just the type of so-called insurgencies that we are having. It is not just the type of measures that we are taking, but it is also societal. It is also what we see in terms of how population sees and population reposes confidence on the leadership. Any problem in those areas will result in somebody exploiting us. J.F.C. Fuller, I'll quote him, he says that the true might of a nation is to be sought for not so much in the strength of the army, which is but a means of materializing this might, but in the health of its spirit, that is its will, national will, to preserve itself from dangers external and internal. And J.F.C. Fuller wrote it a long time back. We need to take measures to ensure that things become orderly. I don't know how many of you are aware of a report that was written by Shri N.N. Vora when he was Home Secretary. And this Vora Committee report recently came out because of an RTI. And this task force was created for one reason, to find out measures in which criminal elements were entering politics, and there was a criminal nexus between the criminals, administration, and the politician. And it goes on to examine various aspects with the various agencies that were involved. And it came to great amount of, after deliberation, it was kept secret. And the findings were very interesting. They said that there is a nexus between criminals and people who are in power. It said that this nexus results in criminals becoming more powerful and subsequently becoming the sword arms where the vote banks are concerned. And then it talks of the external dangers that come out because of this criminal nexus. It's a very important report which came out and somehow was not acted upon. Otherwise, we could have found measures to ensure, as a country, that such a thing is taken care of. There is a need to give a greater attention to what I said is the internal issues of the country, because as a nation, if we want to survive, we need to ensure that internally we are strong, so that nobody can touch us, nobody can exploit us, nobody can exploit the fault lines that exist in India. Whether these are on language, whether these are on religion, whether these are on caste and creed, whether these are on various issues on which agitation is taken. They all can get exploited. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a beautiful tune. Ladies and gentlemen, I've finished. My aim was just to give out a few things so that there are more time open for any questions that you would like to ask. And I would just finish by saying that it is up to you all, up to each one of us, to ensure that if we want national security to be given importance, we look at wide aspect and all issues that impinge on how a nation state can exist. Thank you very much.